You know all those memes out there about how your boomer parents could already own a house and start a family at 30, while you and I are debating on whether or not we should add a fifth roommate to split the rent? Well, at this point, you can forget about owning a house. You can forget about owning a car. And you can even forget about owning your own video games at this point. Sony has recently made the extremely unpopular decision of deciding to permanently move away from physical CD games starting from 2028, which is presumably when the new PS6 will come out. Not surprisingly, the backlash across social media and in real life has been absolutely ferocious, as it very well should be. It's so bad that not just independent YouTubers, but even other corporate shill organizations like IGN are calling it out. Now, on the surface level, this might not seem like that big of a deal, especially if you're not very knowledgeable about the gaming industry. It might not seem like that big of a deal that, hey, why not just download it and play it? What's the difference from a practical standpoint? Well, a lot actually. For starters, there's a fine print under any video game purchase agreement that if you don't have a physical copy, you technically don't have ownership rights to it, and thus it could be taken away from you at any given time. Now, granted, most of the time this doesn't happen. In fact, I've downloaded many digital copies of games myself, and it's never happened to me once. But still, it's a matter of principle. When you pay these increasingly expensive $50, $60, $70 price tags for new games, you should have the right to own it and be able to play it forever, period. And I also do suspect that it could be more and more of an issue going into the future. There's just so many tons of updates going all time at a breakneck pace in the world of gaming and in the world we live in general. And the mere idea that they could revoke your access to a game you already paid for is just unfair from a principle standpoint. One great point someone brought up in the comments is that if they have the right to revoke your ownership after you already purchased it, should we have the right to request a refund at any point after we agree to buy it? You can't have it both ways. I will say that for the most part, if it's a game I kind of want to try out but don't care that much about, yeah, I don't mind just purchasing and downloading a digital copy when it's on sale. But for the big name titles that I've really looked forward to for a while, you know, the games that you call in sick for on the day they release, I'd still like to buy and own physical CD copies of those. Sometimes it's just a nice token of ownership. Sometimes you can add them to the collection, but sometimes there are practical reasons for it too. There are some old games that are just timeless classics I play to this day just for nostalgia's sake, even if it's not an objectively good game with great graphics by modern standards. And yeah, if I spent $60 of my hard-earned money on this, I feel like I should have the right to do that. Now, the good news here is that the backlash has been so insane that I feel like at some point they're gonna have to respond to this. I mean, Sony has not released an official response just yet, but I feel like it's inevitably coming up at some point with how much pressure is building up, and rightfully so. No food, no power. Brutal police, corrupt officials, electioneering, controlled media, crackdown on protest, no meaningful opposition, no private property for the working class. Literally everything they warned us would happen under communism is happening under capitalism. They told you you'd own nothing under communism. Now, under capitalism, you won't even be able to own something as simple as your video games anymore. You know, a lot of out-of-touch boomers are acting so confused as to why young people are becoming increasingly socialist and even communist these days. And I'll just give you the simplest, most direct answer to this mystery. Fear-mongering scare tactics only work when people aren't already experiencing what they're supposed to be scared about. Socialism is supposed to scare us because it leads to famines and breadlines. And yeah, under capitalism, a record amount of Americans are lining up at food banks now. Socialism is supposed to scare us because it's killed millions of people. And yet, the capitalist American healthcare system has single-handedly killed more people than a prime Joseph Stalin. Communism is supposed to scare us because there's no private property. And yeah, under capitalism, not only will you never own a house or a car, you'll never even own a goddamn physical copy of of a video game anymore. And it really just makes you realize that everything they say about socialism is just a capitalist projection. Alright, so before we continue, I gotta take a moment to clearly and accurately define the meaning of the word capitalism itself in order to establish an objective framework for a meaningful discussion. Because every single video, there's always someone in the comments saying, this isn't capitalism, it's corporatism, it's crony capitalism, it's a corporatocracy. Basically, some variation of that's not real capitalism. And real capitalism just has never been tried yet. Let's start with this. Capitalism and free markets are not the same thing. A free market doesn't even really exist in the first place under capitalism, but we won't get into that in this video. Free markets have literally existed since the Stone Age. Mesopotamia had markets. Ancient Rome had markets. The Middle Ages had markets. Capitalism as a system has only existed for about 400 years. Markets predate capitalism by literally many millennia. So what we really have to clearly narrow down here is what exactly, specifically, separates capitalist markets from pre-capitalist forms of free markets. There are two key fundamental characteristics of modern capitalism that inherently separate it from other forms of markets. The prevalence of number one, wage labor, and number two, maximal profit reinvestment. In other words, the reinvestment of surplus wealth to expand production and generate even more profit rather than just for immediate consumption. For example, an ancient Roman slave was compensated for his work through direct food and shelter rather than fixed hourly wages. Let's say his job is to cook meals for his master. His master simply eats the food he cooks instead of having his slave mass cook a ton of meals so that he can sell them for even more profits, reinvest in a bigger kitchen, even more slaves, and again, more profits. The constant need for ever expanding maximal profits for the capitalist business owner is mainly what separates it from other forms of markets. And now this brings us back to Sony's decision to end physical CD copies starting in 2028. The reason you'll never actually own anything under capitalism, the reason why no one actually owns anything under capitalism, is because it's simply unprofitable to capitalist CEOs and corporations for you to own stuff. When I was in my early 20s, I learned a very valuable life lesson about money as I was at the age when everyone started to have cars. I had one for a bit too, but after constantly being dinged every damn month with gas, insurance, DMV fees, and all these other BS car payment monthly fees, I decided I had enough. I got rid of the car entirely and simply opted to make a one-time purchase of a bike instead. It wasn't sexy, it wasn't glamorous, my clueless millennial peers certainly looked at me like a loser at the time, but the decision to buy and actually own a one-time purchase of a bike was what ultimately helped me save up enough money to leave the United States for good one day and permanently escape the corporate 9-to-5 rat race. The lesson for me was very specific and very valuable. Try to be as frugal and save as much as you can. However, if you must buy something, prioritize long-term one-off purchases over recurring monthly subscription fees. Those monthly subscription fees can feel small and innocent at first, but time goes by way faster than you think, and before you know it, they add up and cut through your entire savings. Now, of course, this is my point of view from the proletariat working class perspective. The capitalist business owner class absolutely sees the exact same situation, but since they need to maximize profits, they're going to approach it from the exact polar opposite point of view. To you, a one-time purchase is a great way to save money and escape their corporate plantation. For them, however, a one-time ownership purchase is the biggest imminent threat to their entire capitalist business model. As you've definitely noticed by now, companies have figured out that selling you a one-time physical purchase is really bad for profits. A one-time purchase means you're just a one-time customer. And in order for them to keep profiting off you, they need to produce new products, new goods and services, and they need to keep convincing you with costly advertising money to keep buying them. So why bother doing that when you can just move to a subscription-based model and keep on repeatedly charging people over and over and over to rent out the same product you already created and thus don't have to keep advertising? Now, this has already been going on with the entertainment industry for years. Streaming has taken over, no one owns their own movies anymore. Hell, we even have buy now, pay pay later subscriptions for eating a damn sandwich now. But I will say that it's incredibly disappointing to see that the gaming industry has decided to go in this direction too. Traditionally speaking, gaming has always represented a bit of a reprieve from this non-stop subscription nightmare. I always found gaming to be actually a very financially sound hobby to have. You know, instead of constantly spending money to go out all the time, you make a one-time purchase of a gaming system, a PC, a PS5, and it's hours upon hours of fun. Of course, even when it came to the gaming industry, you could see the writing on the wall when it comes to this for quite some time now. The PS Plus subscription service, all these damn microtransactions in every game these days, and it feels like this last decision by Sony to completely end physical CD copies of new releases is just a straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, as depressing as unfortunate as this all sounds, there is some hope and realistic solutions coming about, as the backlash has just been so intense and severe. First off, Gen Z has already been on a trend of nostalgia for quite some time now, and one uplifting piece of news I saw about this is that they're increasingly canceling Netflix and other streaming services in favor of bringing back digital, physical DVDs. And this is just such a great way to take back ownership of something, at least, and fight back against this parasitic constant subscription model. Hey guys, we noticed something very interesting in the YouTube analytics recently. It appears that the single most important metric for the long-term success of a video isn't actually likes or clicks, it's actually how many people end up subscribing. So, if you found this video important and useful, the best thing you can do to help us get the message out is to simply subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all so much, guys. We really, truly appreciate it. As a younger millennial, I still remember the days of DVDs, Blockbuster, and the times when you actually had to rent out or buy a physical DVD and slide it in the DVD player. And there was just some magic about it that doesn't exist anymore. I even remember when Netflix first came out, and everybody, including myself, was actually enamored with it. Like, wow, what a great business idea. This has made it so much more convenient to watch movies. Boy, did that take age really, really poorly. I haven't even watched anything on Netflix in forever, as this online streaming model has clearly incentivized them to opt for quantity over quality. There are no more timeless classics that a studio actually takes their time with, only constant, low-effort industry slop that gets churned out and mass-produced for the sole sake of getting more titles on the platform, more options for people to choose from. And the result is now hundreds, if not thousands of pointless slop you gotta sift through in the hopes of finding something good once in a while. Thankfully, thank God, people are going back to DVDs to boycott this BS. And now that the gaming industry is headed in the same way, it's a huge breath of fresh air to see people already fighting back against this. Already, we're seeing people cancel their PS Plus subscriptions en masse in response to this decision, which has apparently caused the Sony Group CEO to sell off a massive amount of shares. Now, because GTA 6 is right around the corner, Sony might be able to weather this storm for a while. I mean, let's just face it, we're all going to buy GTA 6 regardless of this incident, but the real pain is going to come whenever the new PS6 is released. Canceling an existing subscription is one thing, but convincing people to drop $500, $600, $700 on a new system that doesn't have the CD option they want, well, that's going to be a very, very tall task for Sony. And I know for a fact myself that I personally will not be buying a PS6 if they don't reverse this decision. Either I'm going to get an Xbox or just switch to PC gaming, or even decide I'm just good with the PS5. I mean, there's still so many games to play out there, and the graphics are already good enough as is at this point. I really don't see a point in dropping a ton of money for next-gen ray tracing or whatever comes with the PS6 when I won't even be able to own my own games there anymore. Lastly, there is a way for all of us to potentially profit off this tremendously. I'm making a commitment that from now on, I'm only buying physical CD copies of video games. I don't care whether it's a new game I've been hyped about or an old one I've always wanted to try for a while that just went on sale. I'm never downloading a digital copy ever again. Not only is this about sending a message to Sony, but also if they end up going through with their plans of canceling all these physical CDs and completely ignoring their community, these physical CD copies of video games could get extremely, extremely valuable in the future when they inevitably become retro vintage items. In 10, 15 years, who knows just how valuable they could get as they'll represent the last remnants of a world that once existed before greed and profits destroyed everything. Ideally, however, we don't even get to that point. Ideally, the boycott and the backlash become so intense that Sony eventually backtracks and reverses this decision. And hey, the power is in our hands to make that happen. All we have to do is refuse to buy the PS6.